Today's guest is Rina Van de Kamp. Rina had a near-death experience where she spent 3 days in heaven and encountered Jesus, and today we're going to learn about it. Rina, thank you so much for joining us, and welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on here, so I really do appreciate it, Jeff. Thank you.
Well, thank you. All right. As you may or may not know, since you're new to the podcast, my audience loves to hear about near-death experiences. So if you don't mind, can we start on the day that yours happened?
The day that it occurred actually has a little bit of backstory to it, because I was a choreographer and dancer. And at that time, I was dancing with a dance company. And we had been working 7 days a week and you know, just between your jobs and the dancing and the dance company, do your jobs all day long. And then you go and you dance till midnight and do it again the next day. So I'd been doing this crazy routine for months and months and months. And then when we went on tour, we were performing 6 nights a week. So the touring schedule was pretty rigorous. And in between, well, actually during the days, we were still rehearsing. We were doing sometimes street performances. It was just insane. So we were going all the time. And finally, I had been having headaches, actually, and I'd been having them for months. And this NDE was a long time ago. It was in 1995. And so I was 26 at the time. And, you know, when you're 26, you think nothing's going to happen to you. You know, headache doesn't mean anything. And you're doing all this crazy stuff. And it's probably just the craziness. You just need some time off. So I just figured, well, let me get through the whole show run. And then I'm just going to take time off. I was going to go travel with a buddy. We're going to go up to the Highlands and let me just rest. And the headaches were getting so bad that I had a very high tolerance for pain at the time. And also, sorry, on a side thought, I might get very emotional because that does come up, even though it was 35 years ago. So that could happen. So the headaches were extremely, extremely bad. Got to where in the morning I'd get up and I couldn't even move my neck. And I was just, excruciating pain and in tears. And at that point in time in my life, I never cried. Didn't cry at all. And couldn't move my head. And I just thought, wow. I'm like, let me just take as many, a leave that you can take in a day and just take it all in one shot. And like, I got to get my head moving, got to get through the rehearsals, got to get through the show, and let's just do this. And that's what I did. So when the show finished, I went up traveling with my friend. We went up into the Highlands. And when you go up into the Highlands, I don't know if you've been to Scotland before, but it's very, or at least especially at that time in 1995, very remote. And there ain't nothing out there. And so we were way up. And then what happened is I just started getting actually nauseous from the pain. And I started vomiting. And this happened consistently for 3 days in a row. I never thought about it, but there's a lot of threes in my story. It's kind of interesting. Never thought about that till now. Anyway, so I was vomiting for like 3 days in a row, and each day it got worse. The last day that I just got so ill after we had breakfast. And I told my friend, I said, hey, I gotta go back to the B&B. I gotta rest. And I didn't even actually know I could leave the restroom because I just didn't think that would happen. It was so bad. So I got myself back to the B&B. I laid down and I was out. And I was in a coma then. So he had taken me in the car and drove me 2 hours south to this little teeny tiny hospital. 2 hours in a coma in a car. Took me down there. They didn't have an MRI nor a CAT scan. Apparently they did a spinal tap. And they said, look, you got to get her down to Glasgow. So he got me down to Glasgow, which was another 5 hours away in a car. And he had to take me in his arms because there was no ambulance, no nothing. So he's carrying me in a coma in his arms in the car. the whole thing that I even made it to the hospital is a miracle of its own accord. So the thing with the NDE is this, just a basic context, is that I don't remember all of it. The Lord hasn't let me remember all of it. One time when I was praying about it, because I asked him, I'm like, Lord, I was there for 3 days. It's not like I was there for 2 minutes or an hour or, what? I'm like, 3 days. I'm like, why don't I remember more? And he told me, he said, if I let you remember more, he said, you wouldn't be able to stay here. He said, you'd come back up with me. And I went, oh, I totally get it. Because even when I reflect on this and reflect on what I experienced, it puts me in another place energetically, another place emotionally. And it makes me not want to be here. I'm ready to I'm going to bail. I'm out. Because there's so much death in this planet, in our world around us. It's in the air. It's in, the things that grow. And even if you're out in the woods, there's so much death in it. And it's so hard to comprehend because heaven has so much life in it. There's life in the air. The air has a feel to it. It's like the closest thing that I could equate it to is, and this is not accurate because words don't fit. You can only grasp a part. You can't grasp the fullness of it in words. But the air is, it's almost like mugginess, but it's not muggy, because muggy to me is uncomfortable and sticky and gross, and I don't like mugginess. But it feels as if the air is holding you, and it's as if the air is caressing you. Now, maybe part of that too is because I'm a dancer and I'm so aware of touch, of sensation. Especially when I dance with partners and such, you have to really be aware of feel and touch and stuff like that. So I was very aware of sensations, that I could feel. The temperature was perfect. I mean, it wasn't even anything that I even thought about. The colors were so vibrant, and it's as if the colors are alive. There's a life to them. There's a richness to them. And they're so intense, and it's almost as if this is going to sound so weird. Whatever. I'm going to let it rip. It's almost as if they communicate with you. And it's as if, like, even when you're looking at plants, it's as if they communicate with you. I mean, even like blades of grass, each one is individual. Flowers follow you. They turn and follow you where you're going. The air has a smell to it. And it reminded me of the scripture that says the praises of his people bring in incense to God. So I know some of it was from people praising God. And sometimes you would hear singing, and it's like it flows through the air in waves. Sometimes it's like angelic. You can hear the angels singing. It'll come and go. And then you get the aroma. And then sometimes the aroma is the aroma of God himself. You can actually smell his essence. And it's amazing because when you smell his essence, it just totally, it gives you another jolt. I don't know how to explain it. It's like, because you're so alive when you're there, but it's as if you get another jolt. But it's like, it's like if you all of a sudden take some B vitamins and you get that jolt. It's kind of like that. It's so cool. And it comes in these waves. And then there's also a harmonic, because sometimes you hear the angels singing, sometimes you're hearing people's praise, and it goes in waves through the atmosphere, and you hear it come and go. But then there's a harmonic that you hear come and go. I don't, there's so much. At one point in time, and I don't know that I'm going to share all of it. I might not. It just depends how it seems, the Lord's leading me or the questions you ask. But there was a point in time I was actually at my home, and the home wasn't finished yet. And my great great grandfather was there working on it. And I've never seen him. I've seen photos of him. So I knew what he looked like from the front. I didn't know what he looked like from the back, but I saw him from the back, and he was inside, he was on top, he was on a ladder. And I described what I saw him doing and what he was wearing. And he was wearing, this very Italian thing. He's wearing his gray pinstripe pants, like suit pants. And he's wearing a white shirt with a t-shirt underneath. He had his sleeves rolled up, and he was working on something in the house, and he was whistling. And I told my mom about it, and her mouth just dropped. She said, he totally did that. She said, he whistled and sang all the time. And she said, and he wore gray pinstripes with the white shirt, with the white t-shirt underneath. And I went, well, he was building my house. That's what he was doing. And then when at another point in time, I knew in my spirit, I could sense it. Jesus was coming up the walkway to my house. And so I ran outside to go to him. And it's so funny because sometimes people have asked me, what did he look like? I couldn't tell you because I wanted to know what he had to say. I don't care what he looked like. What do you got to say? Tell me. And so he told me, he said, you have a choice. He said, you can stay here or you can go back. But I knew in my heart that if I went back, it would absolutely break his heart. If I didn't go back, it would break his heart because there was something he had for me to do. So because I could sense that, I told him, I said, I'll go back. I said, I will go back. And he said, okay. He said, it's going to be hard. He said, but I'll be with you every step of the way. I said, okay. And then I was back. And even when I got back, it's again, remember I was telling you threes? There were 3 days when I had woken up that I have no memory of, none. I've the very first memory actually of waking up because they had to pull the air tubes out of my chest because I was on a life support. And then I don't remember anything for 3 days. And then, I don't know. Anyway, so I'm going to stop there right there. I guess that's enough for now.
Okay. What finally caused the coma? Or did you have spinal meningitis or did you have a stroke or what happened to you?
Oh, yeah, that. Yeah, I had a stroke. I had a massive stroke. I had 9 blood clots on the left side of my brain. And the type of brain damage I had, it's not possible to dream because dreaming comes from the left side of your brain. And almost all of the thalamus was damaged, like 90% of it. And I had damage in the frontal lobe. I had damage in the parietal lobe. I even had damage on the top of my brain stem. I had no memory, short-term or long-term, which is total like amnesia, not total. Because I could remember some things. I mean, like I knew who my mother was and I knew who people were around me and I didn't forget faces. But if it was a new person, I would remember their face, but I couldn't tell you anything about them. And so when people would tell me things, I couldn't remember it. And I couldn't speak. I couldn't read. I couldn't write. The right side of my body was paralyzed. And I had to learn everything.
So when you went back to the B&B, You basically went to go lay down, and that's when you went into a coma.
Correct.
Do you have any sense of time? Like, okay, once you went down, do you think you immediately went into the coma and went to the other side? Can you put out like any kind of time or a sequence of when did you actually go to the other side?
I couldn't tell you. Like I said, the Lord has only let me have little bits to remember. Mm-hmm. And on my website for my dance company, I have it all written down. You can actually click to my website and look at everything that I have written. But there's a lot of stuff I didn't even include in that. But the Lord didn't let me remember everything because he said I wouldn't be able to stay. Mm-hmm. However, what I do recall, and I didn't write this in my story, but and I didn't even mention this in my video on my YouTube channel, but my guardian angel I know was with me, and he was taking me and showing me around. Mm-hmm. And there were some things he was showing me. But I don't know exactly what place and where that happened. And I didn't see him come and get me. I had no white tunnel, nothing. I got nothing.
You just remember all of a sudden you're being there and then and experiencing it.
Yeah.
Did you know about the guardian angel previous to this experience, or did you meet that? You didn't. Okay.
Well, I knew that I had some sort of angel or something, but I wasn't clear on whether or not people have guardian angels or not. Because he's helped me a number of times. I've had some weirdo situations in my life. And one time I was in a car accident that should have taken me out. Absolutely should have taken me out. And it was only a seatbelt, but I felt his hand come across my chest and hold me back and keep my face from going through the steering wheel. So that was the first time that I really and I was like, and I remember looking down as the car was going to hit the freeway banister. And I remember looking down and I could see the imprint of his hand against my shirt and his arm. So he's been around. So,
can you recall what he looked like and what his name is?
I don't remember. Blonde, spiky hair. He looks like a punk rocker from the 80s.
Like Billy Idol.
I would have one like that. He probably wore a big black duster. I don't know. I don't remember that, but that would be like me.
Now, you mentioned that you smelled God.
Yeah.
So what did God smell like?
It's really hard to explain. It's like if you could combine savory aromas with flower aromas, because there was a savory quality. I mean, I don't want to say like clove and that, but there was a savory quality and flower quality. And I knew it was him. In my heart, I'm like, that's God. That's God the Father. I'm like, whoa.
Did you experience God in any other way?
I don't know. Again, that's, like I said, little pieces. I'm sure I did, but I just, just because it would be like him.
Right.
That's in his personality.
Do you recall that when you encountered Jesus, did Jesus identify himself as Jesus, or you just had a knowingness that, oh, that's Jesus?
I had a knowing. It was a knowing. And I don't even know if we really spoke words to one another or we communicated. I don't know if it's telepathically or from our hearts. I mean, I don't know. That I don't know.
Right. What was fascinating is that I believe you were saying that even the colors were alive and kind of talking to you. From what I understand, colors are basically wavelengths of energy anyways. And if you're in a place that's all energy, maybe you're just experiencing wavelengths of energy.
Absolutely. I mean, everything's actually wavelengths of energy. So that would make sense. Yeah. But see, also like each this is going to sound so weird, but whatever. Each cell in the air is the same way. It's almost as if it's got a personality. It's a trip. Mm-hmm. And I got to share this with you. There was one point in time when my angel was taking me to to where my house was, and it's right next to a creek. And because it wasn't that wide, it wasn't more than 10 feet wide. And he had taken me down to the creek. And, you've got all the grass and the flowers. And then amidst the flowers, there are gemstones. And then they trail off into the creek along the sides and into the bottom. Mm-hmm. And they're vibrant and it's just gorgeous. Mm-hmm. And then he said, get into the water. And I'm not a water person. I love water to look at it, but I don't care about creeks, rivers, oceans. That's not my go-to. But he said, get in it. And I was like, okay. Mm-hmm. And I went into the water, and it feels different. It's like the air. I don't know, how do you get into water and it doesn't feel wet? It doesn't feel wet. And when you get in, it's in some ways it's denser than water, but it's so weird. And when you get into the water, as he took me in there, he said, go under the water. And so I went under the water, and he started talking to me, and he said, now breathe. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh my God, I can breathe. And I just started breathing, and I just started laughing, and I'm under the water, and I'm laughing. It sounds crazy. Mm-hmm. It just really sounds nuts.
I mean, to me, it sounds amazing. The way you describe it makes me want to go check it out.
Cool. And that's why when I reflect on it, it makes me homesick.
Yeah.
It just makes me homesick.
Do you think about this experience every day, or has it faded over time like a memory?
I've allowed it to fade, because if I spend too much time thinking about it, it really affects me. And I really want to go. I don't want to be here. So in a way, I have to kind of push it aside, because it's hard. When you come back and you see there's just so much death everywhere. It's in the air, it's in the trees, it's so hard. It's hard to be back. And when people are so violent towards one another, it's just hard to be in that environment, because when you're in heaven, it's just, there's so much, yes, there's love. And it makes you just sound so trite when you just say it in language, but there's so much love. It's like nothing you've ever experienced before. And so much acceptance. And that, nothing's wrong with me, because we're automatically always talking about what's wrong with me. Why did I do this? And and all this judgmental hoo-ha. There's none of that up there. No judgment at all. And in fact, I wanted to make sure to share this part, because this is really important. And maybe you've had somebody share this kind of thing before, but I had a sister. She was younger than I. And I'm 2 years older than she. And when she was 6 months old, she died. Hmm. And she had SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome. And when I was there, I saw her. I saw her from the back. She was probably, 13, 16 at the oldest. And I had a knowing in my heart. And I just understood a lot of things. That first of all, if you have a child that dies, or if you have, maybe you miscarried, or abortions, any of that, your child is in heaven, and they're waiting for you to raise them. And especially if your child, maybe you had an abortion, maybe you had several abortions, it doesn't matter. God has already forgiven you. You got to forgive yourself, and then name your child. Ask the Lord. Ask him, because he's already named the child. He wants you to name him or her. And pray, ask the Lord, name your child, And then that child is given that name from God the Father. And that child then has that name, and the child will be whatever age you most desire to raise them from, which is a trippy thing. Because maybe someone's 70 years old and they lost a baby in their 20s. If they always wanted to raise an infant, it will still be an infant. If they want to raise that child when it's 7 years old, that child will be 7 years old. Because aging is at a different, what am I trying to say? It's like a different process than here. Because time isn't relevant up there. So it's a whole different thing. Your child will get to the age that it's its best age, usually 24, 25, 26, as far as, what their appearance is like. And like when your parents pass away, if they're born again, they go to heaven, they're going to look like they're 24, 25, 26. So take comfort in that.
How religious were you before this experience, and has it changed afterwards?
So, I got born again as a little girl. I was 5, I think, when I got born again, but I wasn't really, I was brought up in church some, but, and then in my 20s, I was running wild. And I wasn't living for God at all. But dealing with what I had to deal with when I came back, with the whole healing stuff. And that's a whole nother part to the story. I had to be tight with Christ. I had to be tight, because if I wasn't, I wouldn't have recovered the way that I've recovered. I've actually spoken to someone who was a researcher, she was a researcher at the time. I don't know what she's doing now, but she was in London, and she researched people having strokes, massive strokes like I had. And she hadn't seen anybody who had recovered the way I had. And the reason why I recovered like that is because of Jesus. He taught me how to read again. And it was work. I'm not saying this is easy. There was nothing easy about it. But that whole thing brought me very close to him, because I would spend, when I finally, it's a long story, but when I finally was staying awake more than, 3 or 4 hours a day, because at first I wouldn't stay awake more than a half hour at a time. And I was sleeping about 20 hours a day. As I started staying up more, I started getting into the Word more and spending a lot of time with the Lord. And since that time, when he's communicated with me, he's communicated, and he communicates in a lot of ways. He communicates in the still, small, quiet voice. He communicates sometimes with the knowing. He communicates with his word. He shows you stuff, and you get what I call the aha. Or he can communicate in dreams and visions. Now, with me, he's given me a lot of visions over the years. It's not all the time, but when I'm in prayer and in the Word, he gives me visions, and I have understanding, and I know exactly what's happening, what's going on. And that's how he's communicated with me. Now, it could be because of the brain damage that I had, because before the stroke, I had a ton of dreams. And after the stroke, I still don't really have dreams. Now, in the last year, the Lord has actually given me a lot of dreams in this last year. That's never happened before. But in this last year, he's given me a lot. It's just how he's communicated with me. And he'll communicate with anybody any way you'll allow him. I mean, it's up to you. So was I tight with him before the stroke? No.
All right. What other ways have you changed due to the experience?
One of the ways is trying to find the right way to say this. I don't have time for a lot of stupidity. And that sounds weird, but like people just talking about trite, nonsensical stuff, I don't care about. I need to be around people who are real, not putting on any sort of facade. I have no patience for that. And consequently, I'm not good at I'm not good at social situations because I don't care about, when you think of rain to hurt the rhubarb. I don't care. You need to talk to me. Let's talk real. Let's talk deep. Let's like say something that means something. Otherwise, don't bug me. I also have, this is going to really sound horrible, and I don't mean it to sound like this. But I have no patience for whining, because what most people whine about is stupid, nonsensical stuff that doesn't mean anything, because there's a difference between crisis and inconvenience. What most people whine about is inconvenience. It doesn't mean anything. When it's crisis, that's a whole nother deal. So I don't have patience for people that whine and get spun out with inconvenience. I have no patience for that at all. Now, the Lord also gave me, since the stroke, my primary job as of, for years now has been as a body worker. And he has given me like how to work with people and help in their healing process. And he's totally done that. And I can feel when he's on me when I'm working with someone. And I never had that before. And again, that's hooked up to how he helped me in recovery, because as I was learning some of these skill sets, I didn't have memory to remember anything. I couldn't remember anything. And so I would have to fully go on word of wisdom, word of knowledge. I would have to trust him to tell me where to go and what to do, because I couldn't remember anything. Because that amnesia was like bad. But he led me through all of it. And I just leaned on him, and I kept leaning on him more because I had to survive.
Have you noticed that you've developed any abilities that you didn't have before?
I can sense energetics. When there's a certain energy in a room, or certain, I guess some people would say a vibe, I can tell what's going on, and I can tell what's happening. So if people are talking and that sort of thing, I already know the basic idea of what's happening. I can tell the level that it's at. Not that I know their exact words, but I can tell what it is. Do you know what I mean? Like if it's a negative thing, or like, case in point, if someone's slamming you and saying terrible stuff about you, I can sense it. I can feel it. Just as if they're talking, I can sense it and I can feel it. And it's also the same when I'm in conversation with people. I can tell how they're listening. And it's not like I'm not eavesdropping in somebody's thought life. I'm not doing that. The Lord would never really do that unless he wants you to something specific. He wants maybe you to pray about something for someone else to help. It's always to help people, always. And so sometimes, like I said, is that when I'm in conversation with people, I can tell how they're listening, and I can tell when they check out, and I can tell when they're back. I can tell if they're already thinking about their next phrase that they're going to say, and when they're right there.
Did your physical health return back to normal?
It's been a long haul. My physical health, it's interesting how the Lord's used numbers with me, because not only has there been 3s, there's been 7s and 17s. He does that with numbers sometimes. So with my brain, it took me 7 years to get my brain back. Now, I still have some trouble on occasion. It's rare. It's very slight. Forgetful things and stuff like that. And it's not like, because most people say, yeah, well, I forget stuff too. It's not the same. It's not, there's a difference. And when if I'm very tired, if I haven't been taking care of myself, I start almost not declining, but it's like I lose words. I can't speak. I can't function. I can't think. So I have to make sure to keep my health up and keep myself strong, because it will start to slide back. Now, my physicality, when I talk about my physical condition, understand that I'm talking as a dancer and somebody that's very much knows what's happening. I very much know what's happening in my body. And most people, even early on, wouldn't be able to tell that I was still having issues. But I knew I was having major issues, especially if I was going to go, dance. I mean, forget it. Try to balance and do these. That's not happening. So there were different breakthroughs, different levels that there'd be a breakthrough. And it because the side that had the paralysis goes into what's called, I think it's called ataxia. It goes into a state of seizure. It just starts seizing. And then it starts building up all this scar tissue. So when you move, it's extremely painful. And it took a long time to break through that. Because even when you break through the scar tissue, it starts to build back up again. It's not as bad, but it starts to build back up again. And then you got to go through it again, tear it up, and then it starts to build back up again. And again, it's not as bad that time either. And so it's a progressive thing. So it took 17 years until I broke through all of that scar tissue. And there was a part in my spine that just wasn't releasing and unlocking. And I still had trouble in my spine. So when I was dancing with, whatever I was doing, there were certain things I couldn't do. It's not that I didn't have the strength. My spine didn't want to function. And so it took years to get that back. It took 17 years. Mm-hmm. Now to this day, I have to be careful because my body has been through a lot. And so there's times when it's done. It's tired. It needs to rest. And there's times when I can push it. So I'm still sensitive to stuff, and I have to be very cognitive to keep my health up because it can decline very quickly.
Well, it's interesting that you said 3, now 7, and 17. I think those are all prime numbers. So maybe
they are
kind of mathematics speaking to you.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah. So besides the physical stuff, and besides you don't want to really focus on there, are there any other after effects from your experience that you have to manage in your life?
This one isn't as bad as it used to be. I've gotten a lot better now. Now that I'm an old broad, it's not as bad as it was like 10 years ago. So patience was something that I had an issue. I mean, we all have an issue with patience, but patience with regard to achieving something, accomplishing something, especially in somebody's body. I mean, because of me being a dancer and stuff, even when I'd be teaching classes and stuff like that, I would get so frustrated when people couldn't pick stuff up. And I have to let that go because, and that's not coming from the choreography part, but I would go back to, the talking of, come on, I've been through so much crap, suck it up. You can do this. It's that not having patience for where somebody is. And that's something I've had to really chill out because who am I to judge where somebody else is at? I can't judge where their heart is at. I can't judge with how they have to function and operate because that's not a fair assessment. What I've had to do is not what somebody else has had to do. Mm-hmm. So that's something I've had to learn. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess that's the main thing for now.
Are there any other messages that you can remember from your experience, or can you remember if you have a certain purpose here?
There were specific things that I know that I was here for. Since the recovery and all that stuff, there's certain things that I know I was here to do that I've achieved. And it's been a little challenging because at some points in time, I could sense I'd accomplished it. And I was just waiting for direction because it was like, okay, I'm done now. Am I done? Let's get out of here. I'm ready to go home. And then I would just wait for direction again. And then eventually, somehow, some way, the Lord would lead me to somebody. And I'm like, that's who I'm here for. I'm here to help that person. I'm here to help them with this. And so I know that the Lord's done that with me to help me get me through, and give me the direction of where to be and where to go, and two, part of it is because everybody's got a gifting. Everybody does. They have a gifting, they have a calling. And my calling is dance, choreography and dance. And so part of it was I was called to come back and do more work. And I did. I formed my company in 2002. Our last show was in 2018. And, and now, I was in the process as, when everything happened in the last year, I was in the process of writing a play, and it would have been a physical theater play. So it's a lot more theatricality rather than dance. And I would have gone that way, because I'm too old for that other stuff. I'm done. I don't need to be doing that other stuff.
Right. I think the type of dancing you perform is modern dancing. And I think it would be very interesting if you choreographed a piece expressing your experience, if you haven't already done that.
I did.
Oh, you did?
I did.
Do you have that on video?
Yes. It's
you should put that on your YouTube channel. That would be amazing for people to check out.
I think I did. Did I? Oh, bugger. What did I do with that video? Is it on my webpage? I don't remember now. I think it's on my webpage. Okay. It's me hanging in a rope and harness inside a steel frame cage that's symbolic of the bed, of the hospital bed. So I already did that piece, and I actually did it twice, 2 different years. I did it in 2000. When did I do that show? That show was in 2004. And then I did it again in 2009. I did a remake, a revise. I changed it a little bit, but but I've done it. And I can't do that piece anymore. It's too hard. It's too emotionally hard. Mm-hmm. Because I don't need to go there.
Mm-hmm. A couple questions here. 1, did your friends and family notice a big difference of your personality after your experience? And 2, for the people that you told, how did they take it?
No, they totally believed me. Totally. And my 2 dearest friends totally believed me. And I'm sorry, what was your first question?
My first question was, did your friends and family notice a significant change in your personality afterwards?
They sure did. In fact, my mom still talks about to this day that, my personality is completely different. It's like I'm a different person. And my 2 girlfriends from college, girlfriends I mentioned earlier, they say the same thing. Mm-hmm. They're like, yeah, you're you, but you're different. You're not, you're just different. So they do say that. Can
you expand on that? Like, in what way are you different?
Believe it or not, a lot more subtle. Mm-hmm. Who knew? A lot more subtle. I don't get as aggravated with people and things and situations, and I'm not so spun out. Mm-hmm. Because when you're in your 20s, you're just living life, doing what you're doing. But I don't know, just very, very different. Probably not as driven by superficial success. You know what I mean? Where there's more substance now, rather than I have to do these goals because that'll make me a better person. That's fluff, but real stuff. And so there's a lot more calm. That's the other thing they tell me. There's just a lot more calm, a lot more peace.
Some people watch my videos because someone in their family or someone close to them had died recently. And I think they're there because they're seeking some type of reassurance that their loved ones or the person is okay. What kind of advice can you give to them?
There is a heaven. There is a heaven and there is a hell. And, if your loved one, you can never judge where someone's heart is. You can never judge where someone's heart is. And you have to ultimately turn it over to the Lord. It's not like you can say they are in heaven or they are in hell, because there are those two places. And you never know what someone's final decision is before they go. You don't know. That's between them and God. And you just have to trust and talk to the Lord about it. And he'll give you peace about it. And if they're, the thing is going to heaven is far better than here. Far better than here. And here's the other thing, because a lot of people don't think about this, is that if there's ever like sometimes people have a fight and maybe one person, whatever, these two people don't talk and one person dies. And then that other person has all this guilt their entire life because they never, remedied, they never, solved the problem. And they have all this guilt their entire life. Well, when they die and go to heaven, their friend isn't going to remember that at all. And they're going to welcome with open arms. There's nothing to feel guilty about. There's never any condemnation. It's amazing. And people that maybe you had words with, that will all be gone. It won't even be a memory.
All right. Now I'm curious because you just mentioned hell twice, but you didn't mention it in your experience. What makes you say that there's a hell?
I've had a lot of experience with demons.
That's before or after your experience?
Before.
Oh.
And like I said, is everybody's got giftings. What I finally learned about my giftings, before I didn't understand. When I was a little kid, I didn't get it. So when I would see this stuff, we lived in a house. I'm telling you, this house was like being in Amityville Horror. It was awful. And I never understood what was going on. And I didn't understand why that was happening. But I also knew I was very sensitive to it. So I could always tell when stuff was around. And evil entities were around. And as I got older and as I got into the Word, like after, coming back and learning about the Word and how he tells you how stuff works, is that's part of what's called discerning of spirits. You discern the bad ones, but you can discern the good ones too. And you can also discern when there's, because sometimes there are times when you can sense a loved one. You can sense a loved one around. That does happen. Just as you can sense God the Father, you can sense Jesus, you can sense the Holy Spirit, and then you can sense the demonic entities as well. So I didn't know that was one of those things. And it's hooked up to word of wisdom and word of knowledge. It's discerning the spirits, word of wisdom, word of knowledge. They all work together. And the Lord has really worked with me, especially during the recovery, with word of wisdom, word of knowledge. And more word of knowledge than wisdom. Word of wisdom is about future. Word of knowledge is about present and past. And so like when I'm working with a client, I understand what's happening present and past. I understand what's happening in the injury. I can see it. And discerning spirits goes with it. And because I had seen them so often, and I know that there's a place for them. And then, when I learned in the Word where it is and what's happening, I'm like, okay, there's definitely a hell.
Okay. So at this point in your life, do you fear death at all?
Bring it on. Let's go. Let's get this party started. Blow this popsicle stand. I'm out.
All right, well, I'm going to switch gears with you. You've mentioned your website, and you said that on your website, I think this is all written out, and your dance may be there. So what is your website so people can find it?
www.zion, Z-I-O-N, dancecompany.com.
Mm-hmm. And then
ZionDanceCompany.com.
And probably when most people get there, it's your website's mostly about your dance company, but you just have these extra things there.
There's all sorts of stuff there about shows and the work, and there's stuff about each company member. And then on the main page, when you go to the website, there's an what do you call that? A little button you can press to go to the story, which is part of my like bio and stuff.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
All right. So you also have a YouTube channel. What is the name of that?
Just my full name, Rina Van de Kamp.
Rina Van de Kamp. All right, great. All right. Well, before we finish up here, Rina, do you have one last positive message that you can share with everybody?
Heaven is real. God is real. Jesus is real. You know, the Holy Ghost is real. And there's nothing better. There's nothing better. And when you go there in just feel the open arms of love, and there's nothing that can compare to it. Nothing. So keep looking up, keep looking forward. Because that's where we're going.
Well, thank you for that message. And Rina, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate you, and I wish you the best.
Thank you, Jeff. I thank you so much for this. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. All right. Well, have a wonderful evening.
You too.
All right. Take care. And bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.